Freak collisions, pinball crashes, deceptive drivers, and Tesla haters caught on tape are all coming up on this week's episode of Wham Baam Teslacam.
Wham Baam Teslacam, I hope you're satisfied.
Zerfinator was late for work one morning, but his Tesla was maintaining a safe following distance and adjusting its speed for the icy conditions. Sadly, not all of the other drivers were doing the same. The driver of the pickup ahead of him, who'd already been tailgating other traffic, finally decided to make a move that turned out to be very reckless. When he tried to pass the car ahead of him in the travel lane, he lost traction before his pickup turned into a pinball. Thankfully, the other drivers nearby were already going pretty slow, so the results of his poor decision weren't as disastrous as they could have been. Zerfinator joined other drivers in immediately slowing down, activating his hazard lamps when he noticed the pickup losing control. He told us this curve, which is right before the Michigan state line, is notorious for collisions. He sent his Teslacam footage to the police as soon as he arrived at work, then texted his wife and kids, "I have a video for Wham Bam now." If you've got footage to share with us, visit the link in the video description. Just remember that it can take a few weeks or more before we're able to review a submission, so be sure to subscribe so you'll be notified of every upload. This subscriber had left his Cybertruck parked at the Phipps Plaza in Atlanta. Parking was tight, which he said is normal on a Saturday afternoon. While he and his wife were away, the occupants of a vehicle parked next to the Cybertruck returned, and one passenger seemed upset about having to squeeze between the two vehicles. Before leaving, she hocked a loogie on our subscriber's Cybertruck. She seems like a very pleasant person. Perhaps she should have directed her ire toward the driver of the vehicle she'd gotten into. As our subscriber's footage proves, he'd parked his Cybertruck farther from the line. If anyone had been off-center, it was the other driver. Then again, maybe she just hates Teslas and/or Cybertrucks, kinda like the guy in this next video. CJ had parked his Cybertruck while visiting a new bakery with a friend. That's them right there. Watch what happened when they went to a park to enjoy their croissants. 20 minutes later, a passerby on his phone went out of his way to walk over and spit on the Cybertruck's passenger side window and door, after a guy we assume is his wife's boyfriend pointed it out to him. CJ thought a bird had pooped on his Cybertruck until he checked his Sentry mode recordings. Thankfully, he always carries alcohol wipes and a cleaning cloth, and the vandal's squishy gift wiped right off. But that's not the end of the story, it gets better. After CJ posted this video to a local social media group, one anonymous commenter told CJ he deserved this treatment for driving a Tesla, and that, although they knew who had done it, they weren't going to snitch. A few days later, this handwritten note arrived in his mailbox from someone who claims to be the spitter himself. In case you can't read his chicken scratches, I'll go ahead and decipher them for you. We left in all the grammatical and punctuation errors for your enjoyment. I will now attempt to render this note in what I imagine his own voice must sound like.
Hi, I saw your Facebook post last night. I'm the guy who spat on your car yesterday. You probably guessed that I did that because it's a Cybertruck, which, your politics aside, comes off as substantially more pro-Elon Musk than even a standard Tesla. That being said, the above is merely an explanation of what was going through my head yesterday and is not an excuse. It was very stupid of me to do that, and there isn't an excuse for it. For obvious reasons, I don't want my name attached to any of this. Please consider this a formal apology. Sorry about that. Hope your car's okay, and it won't happen again. P.S. I don't know if your car's camera records audio, but if it does, you should be able to hear my wife chiding me.
CJ told us the croissants were worth the hate, as is his Cybertruck, which he told us is the best vehicle he's ever driven. It's always satisfying when Sentry mode solves a mystery, like in this next submission from Paul. His Model 3 was parked at home when another driver backed into it before taking off. Paul tried polishing out the damage, but he made a police report after realizing his car would need to be repainted. Thanks to his Teslacam evidence, everything went smoothly. As it turned out, the other driver was a caretaker for someone who lived across the street, and they'd parked in the parking lot belonging to the apartment complex where Paul lives. We know accidents happen, but what's most important is what the responsible party does afterward. Turning an honest mistake into a hit and run is not the way to go. Teslacam is also great for proving to others what you saw when nobody believes you, like when you're trying to explain that you saw a vehicle almost get crushed by a trampoline. There's no way you saw that, Sarah. A trampoline isn't going to roll hundreds of feet down the road. You be cappin'. Seriously though, no cap, Sarah told us that she doesn't think the driver ahead of her would have seen the trampoline coming if not for her Tesla's adaptive high beams. She loves the way they light up the road without blinding other drivers, so you can spot anything approaching. Here's another story we wouldn't believe if it hadn't been captured by Teslacam. This guy was surfing on a chair on top of a one-wheel when he pretended to lose control to prank some crossing pedestrians. He did end up stopping for them, but then he proceeded to run the red light. This happened during a birthday trip when our subscriber and his girlfriend were exploring Santa Barbara's historical sites and food scene. He immediately said, "That's a wham bam," but apparently she wasn't impressed. Nick was cruising down the passing lane when a Honda sped past him in the travel lane. As the Honda raced past him, it was followed closely by a dark Dodge Charger with tinted windows, plus a custom lighting package for just such an occasion. You'll see what I mean. The Honda driver never suspected a thing as he continued zigzagging through traffic right up until the party lights came on. Gotta love the beautiful melodic sound of instant justice, which we added of course since Teslacam doesn't record audio. At least we can be thankful this particular Honda driver didn't bump anything. Patrick was driving his Cybertruck in Alexandria, Minnesota, when a pickup driver spotted it behind him and rolled coal through a hood bypass exhaust pipe. Just when we thought that rolling coal had died out, the fume sniffers proved us wrong. What a creative way to fart your own money away. Lucas was driving on the German Autobahn when something so unexpected happened, you might want to sit down before we show you. This Teslacam footage was captured in 2024, but Lucas couldn't share it publicly until the legal case was resolved, one involving the German police. Lucas was driving down an unrestricted section, meaning there's no speed limit, at around 100 miles per hour while following behind a Skoda. Suddenly, the other vehicle's license plate flew off before slamming into the front lid, windshield, and glass roof of Lucas's Tesla. Lucas knew he needed to catch up to the Skoda and try to get the driver's attention, but that was easier said than done. He also called the police, but without a way to give them the vehicle's license plate number, that didn't help much. Lucas continued to try to signal the driver, and a few miles later he followed the SUV down an off-ramp before informing the other driver about what had happened. That's when the other driver put a blue emergency light on the roof, revealing that the SUV was actually an unmarked German police vehicle. Additional unmarked patrol units were called in to search for the license plate while a section of the Autobahn was closed. In the end, at least 4 police vehicles were involved, including both federal police and Autobahn police. Lucas found out the SUV did belong to the police, but it was actually a measurement and surveillance vehicle. It had been fitted with a temporary license plate that could be switched out as needed, but it hadn't been properly mounted. Well, if you thought any of this meant that Lucas would have an easy time getting the damage to his Tesla fixed, think again. Police vehicles in Germany are insured by the government, so you can't make an insurance claim in a case like this. Lucas had to sue the government directly, which required hiring a lawyer, getting a certified damage assessment, and going to court. When the government finally agreed to pay for the damage to Lucas's Tesla, he received a settlement offer, but they didn't want to pay for the taxes. Isn't that interesting? The government doesn't want to pay its own taxes. Nearly 2 years of legal battling later, Lucas finally got the full settlement amount. Yikes! If you ever get in a collision in Germany, you'd better hope the responsible party isn't a cop. Jonas had his own Autobahn battle, and it also involves the police. But this time, they didn't cause the damage, they just let the woman who did get away with it. He was on a European road trip and was on the Autobahn when he was suddenly rear-ended. After the collision, Jonas noticed the other vehicle was following him, so he headed down the next off-ramp to stop and assess the damage. When he did, the other driver just kept going. Jonas reported the hit and run to the police and provided them with his video evidence. A couple of months later, they sent him a letter saying they'd dropped the case, as proof that the accused noticed that she was involved in the accident cannot be provided. The damage to Jonas's Tesla, a small dent and some scratches, cost about $1,400 to repair. He told us the other driver's insurance provider still hasn't accepted responsibility, so the claim has yet to be settled. Swayze was driving down a California highway when he suddenly felt his Tesla swerve by itself. When he looked to his right, he realized the driver next to him had swerved into his lane and their vehicles had made contact. The other drivers suddenly turned off their lights before speeding away at over 100 miles per hour. Swayze followed them at first while calling 911, but the emergency operator asked him to stop chasing them. He never did find out what had happened. What's your theory? Was the other driver drunk, or was this a targeted anti-Tesla attack? Scott was driving his Model Y in Buena Park, California, when he noticed a Toyota drifting into the bike lane. Suddenly, the Toyota's wheels scraped the curb, nearly climbing it several times. When Scott and the rest of traffic stopped for a red light, the Toyota blew straight through it before colliding with a BMW convertible. A firefighting vehicle had just turned through the intersection when the collision happened, and the firefighters immediately returned to render assistance. Scott's B-pillar camera also captured other drivers calling 911 right after the collision occurred. Scott thinks the Toyota driver might have fallen asleep, or perhaps they'd experienced a medical issue. Either way, a competent advanced driver assistance system could have prevented this collision. Connor was on his way to get dinner with his girlfriend when he drove into a parking garage near the restaurant. When the Mercedes SUV ahead of him stopped to wait for another vehicle backing out of a spot, Connor also stopped, but he didn't know the Mercedes driver was planning to reverse. With very little time to react, Connor tried to warn the other driver by honking, but she couldn't hear his horn because, get this, she was also honking. I bet that was pleasant to listen to. As Connor got out of his Tesla, he admits he was very upset, but he calmed down when he realized the Mercedes driver was a new driver. When Connor saw the SUV was full of her friends and they were all dressed up, he asked where they were going. As it turned out, they were on their way to a special event at the same restaurant Connor and his girlfriend had been headed to. Awkward. Anthony was on his way home after charging his Model 3 one evening when he pulled up behind a Toyota RAV4 at a red light. All of a sudden, he noticed it backing up. Anthony laid on the horn while the Toyota driver continued reversing until they made contact. Both drivers stopped and got out to assess the damage and exchange information. The driver was initially apologetic, but when he looked at the damage to Anthony's Tesla, he acted like it was no big deal. Anthony called the police, but since nobody was seriously injured, they told him they wouldn't be sending officers and the two drivers should just exchange information. So that's what they did, or that's what Anthony thought they did anyway. When he got home and tried to file an insurance claim, he realized the insurance information he'd been given was for a 2020 Honda CR-V. The other driver had given him the paperwork for a completely different vehicle, not the RAV4 he'd been driving that night. Thankfully, he had another lead to work from, his Teslacam footage. He used it to find the RAV4's license plate number, which allowed the insurance company to locate the correct policy information. Fixing his front bumper cover and replacing the front lid cost about $3,800, and reapplying vinyl to both parts added another $2,500 to that. No big deal, right? Calvin was on his way home from an exam and was in a left turn lane when a Jeep driver cut across 3 lanes to reach the same turn lane without checking for traffic. Calvin swerved in an attempt to avoid a collision, but this caused his front left wheel to scrape against the curb, and the 2 vehicles still made contact. Both drivers pulled over, and after Calvin checked the damage to his Tesla, he approached the Jeep driver. He told us she was immediately defensive and insisted that no contact had been made. She refused to provide Calvin with her insurance information, so he called the police. He hadn't yet reviewed his Teslacam footage, so he didn't realize that the Jeep's bumper had also contacted his rear door. When police arrived, they cited the Jeep driver for failing to maintain her lane and forced her to provide Calvin with her insurance information. Calvin told us she later tried to make a claim against Calvin to get her bumper repaired, which is weird considering her insistence that there hadn't been a collision. Unsurprisingly, her claim was denied once Calvin gave his insurance provider a copy of his Teslacam footage. He's thankful his Tesla recorded everything, and he's pretty sure the Jeep driver is now a Tesla hater. If you want to see more times Teslacams got drivers out of jams, watch this episode featuring footage that was crucial to exonerating Tesla owners. Or watch this episode if you want to see one of the wildest police chases we've ever featured. Subscribe before making your choice, and we'll see you with more next week.